Bit of breaking news involving Blackpool Football Club, and they have sacked their head coach, Michael Appleton, in the last few moments. We've just received it.
Oh, jeezy, peeps, man.
Skipper Schindler has a chance to write his name in Huddersfield Town legend. And he takes that chance!
Jeezy peeps, man. It's the warm-up episode 97. It's Brady and Tom. We're previewing the Blackpool game and we're joined by David Hartrick. Dave, according to my estimations, this is your 5th appearance on the warm-up, which is the same number of appearances that Brodie Spencer has made for the first team this year. So do you consider yourself to be the Brodie Spencer of Huddersfield Town-related podcasting?
Yeah, absolutely. I love that boy. As you know, I absolutely love that boy. I think he's got a huge career ahead of him. And one of the sweetest things was I wrote something about him last season after watching him in the B team. Not a big piece, just picked him out in a piece looking at some of the youngsters going forward. And it got picked up by a load of papers in Northern Ireland, and he got a little bit of chatter. And he absolutely loved it. And he said to somebody in the press team that, I can't believe Yorkshire Live is writing about me, which I thought was just the sweetest thing.
That's really nice. I wasn't expecting that either. That was completely off the cuff. So that's why you're a podcasting professional, Dave. Tom, you were also a podcasting professional. I sensed from my tone I wasn't going to go there, but I did. There was no pod reviewing the whole game from Matt and the gang. So I know it was a while ago. We kind of maybe forget about it, but you can talk about it a little bit. What were your thoughts, very briefly?
I actually don't think Town did too bad. I think what I was worried about going into it was what they would threaten us with, the kind of balls into the box. And we did deal with it we pretty much dealt with it for 90 minutes. Well, 95 minutes. And then it was just really unlucky, wasn't it? We could have seen the game out. I think if we'd have got that second, because it was just after half time, we had quite a decent-ish chance. Got to give Bill Earl a massive shout out, haven't you? I mean, he did really well. I think there was just that one little mix up where maybe, I don't know if he didn't use his voice loud enough and he ran into the back of, I think it was Tom Lees or Hellick or something. And but other than that, he was brilliant. I don't know. It's really gutting when you concede in that manner with literally about 30 seconds to go and it feels like a loss. But when you step back from it a couple of days afterwards, I actually think it was a semi-decent performance. And I think it's something that we can keep building on.
Yeah, you kind of summed it up for me there. No one likes conceding a last-minute equaliser. I think for me, what makes it even more annoying is it's actually a really good finish. So you can't. It's not even like it's a scrappy goal. It's almost like, oh, that's just come out of nowhere.
Yeah.
But yeah, Dave, we obviously you talked about it on your pod, but you weren't too. You were disagreeing with Chicken for once, weren't you? You weren't too positive about this.
I wasn't. Yeah, I wasn't overly impressed. I think Town have got a real problem with sniffing blood, and Hull aren't great, and they're good players playing forward positions, and it was pretty clear early on that their good players weren't having a good day. Now, like Steve's point was perfectly valid that he thought Town defended really, really well, and he thought it was one of their best defensive performances of the season. I don't disagree with that at all, but I just think they were entirely too passive. They tried to sit on a lead when, for me, there was the opportunity there to go in and get another, to go and grab another. And I just felt they went back into their sort of risk-adverse, let's stay in shape, let's be tight. Now's the time to be difficult to beat. And the thing is, I haven't got a massive issue with it. When we say disagree, there wasn't blood on the microphone or anything.
That's not what I heard.
I just think that I don't think at some point Town have got to win realistically 3 or 4 away games to get out of this longer term this season. And that was an away game that I think when you go 1-0 up, I think they could have put their foot on their throats, and they didn't. What they did is, as I said, they went narrow. They tried to stay in shape. They tried to make it difficult. They wanted to be hard to break down. And it was like, just for me, it's like, don't be this passive. You can hurt these. You can hurt these. And I'm not Kevin Keegan, don't get me wrong, but I just think you can 2-0 your way out of this rather than try and win 1-0 your way out of it was my point, really.
Yeah, and you talk about away games, that Town should be looking to target 3 points or win. This one on this Saturday, Blackpool, so they sit a place below Town in the table. They're in the relegation zone as well in 23rd, 26 points like Town. Blackpool at the bottom of the form table, they've failed to win any of their last 10 league games, and they've only won 2 of their last 10 home games. So, however, they have sacked their manager, Michael Appleton, today. Cue the groans from Town fans who will say, managers seem to sack their coach before the playoffs. But Tom, with that news, what's your thoughts about this? Does that change the game for you at all? I suppose it's a bit of an unknown quantity, and sometimes you see a performance after they've sacked a manager, but really, if you take that out of it, it's still a game Town should be looking to win.
Yeah, but I honestly think this one is going to make a difference. I don't think the Cardiff one was as pinnacle. Because they sacked Morrison, didn't they, just before?
After we beat him. That's what we'll do to you.
I know. Yeah. But I don't think this there's such a bad vibe around that club at the moment. Their fans just wanted nothing to do with him for the last few months, basically. And they're basically all coining this a bit of a party on Saturday that he's gone. And I just think that's going to bring back a bit more bounce around Bloomfield Road. I always think when that place does get going, it can be quite a semi-decent atmosphere. And in the last few weeks, there's been a lot of empty seats there and stuff. So it'd be interesting to see if a few more will turn up because he's gone. Yeah, Brady. I'm actually really gutted he's gone because I was very confident going into Saturday that we could get 3 points. Now I'm a bit more tentative about the whole thing.
Yeah, Dave, do you think it changes anything, or do you still think Town have enough to get 3 points?
I think the math stays the same, really, which is that if Town are serious, they have to go for this game. They have to target this game. They have to try and get 3 points from this game, whoever's in the dugout. And I think there's been since the World Cup, there's been several reasons to be slightly more cheerful about Town going forward and having hope that they can get themselves out of this situation. But this is a huge game now. This is a huge game. It's not a complete disaster if they draw and get a point there. But at the same time, they're just storing up their issues because, as I said, they've got to go and get some points on the road. They've got to go and get some 3-point wins on the road. And this is one of those games where it's slightly easier than others without trying to be too disparaging to Blackpool. But yeah, I think you've just got to shut the noise out of it and you've just got to concentrate on what you're about and what you're doing. And I think Town... I think they can set up and be difficult to beat, but they've got to have a plan B here, and the plan B has got to be to go for it. They can't, if it's 1-1, 0-0 or 1-1 with 15 minutes to go, really, I think they've got to go for it rather than sit on it, is the thing. And now I would argue they've got some squad options to be able to do that. But yeah, it's a big game. It's a big game, this one.
It is a big game indeed. And Blackpool will be also thinking it's a big game, a chance to go ahead of a relegation rival. Tom, are there any players you picked as a key man for the game on Saturday from the Blackpool side?
Well, I've probably gone with the obvious one, but this is someone that apparently he's not. They were moaning that he wasn't playing him in the right position or playing him much, really, but he's had a decent amount of appearances this season. But, Jerry Yates stands out a lot, doesn't he? 10 goals. 3 assists in all comps this season. So I think it's a very interesting team. I mean, they've got some big lads. They've got quite big lads up front, haven't they? So I think it depends if we can just keep them quiet, win those aerial duels and stuff. But yeah, I mean, he's in there for me just because from what I've heard this today, I had to listen to a few Blackpool fans stuff about Appleton leaving, and one of the main things to come out with it that they think they'll get the Jerry Yates back that they had more to the start of the season with him gone now. So it'd be really interesting to see if he causes us more problems on Saturday.
Yeah, he's hoping not. Dave, what about you? Who did you like the look of in Blackpool's squad?
They've got some good options in attacking areas. You know, Charlie Patino is the one that everybody sort of talks about and could be the next Emile Smith-Rowe. Remember him? Obviously, bringing Josh Bowler back, he doesn't look a little bit of a similar situation to Anthony Knockaert in that he's come back, and I don't think while he's fit, I don't think he's championship fit yet. So we'll see how far along that little ladder he is. And I think they've just got lots of players who can look Premier League or can look League One. It just completely depends what day you get them on, really. But for me, I would say Liam Bridcut, and this isn't because he is one of my all-time favourite Brighton players. He may have only made 4 appearances this year and he can't run anymore, but I just love him. So he's definitely the most important man in that squad. Arguably club. But no, I think Yates is good. I don't know if you've seen much of him, but he is good and he's brave and he takes people on and he takes risks. And the thought of him one side and Bowler the other and Patino sort of drifting in between, that's good. You know, there's no getting away from that. That's good. But then if you look at, you know, what they've got at the back and in midfield, there's nothing really to fear there, I wouldn't say. Not with the options Town have now. So, yeah, you know, you've just got to Town and just got to make the game about them rather than Blackpool.
Yeah, good point. Patino, someone I picked out. Again, it's easy, but I remember when we spoke to Joe from the Seasiders pod, he was saying he's kind of been impressing more and more as the season's gone on. But yeah, you talked about Josh Bowler. I think that's key for them. But Morgan Rogers as well. I think that's a really good loan signing. So he'll be one to watch out. So I'd probably go for him because he can play as a striker in the 2 or on the left, and he's a good, highly thought of young player. So one to watch out. And I remember obviously the previous fixture were at home. It's remembered a lot for Hawkeye for all the wrong reasons, but I remember their keeper Grimshaw had quite a good game against us, I thought. So maybe one to watch out for. Anyway, Tom, we will move on to View from the Other Side because we're doing things a little bit differently this week, aren't we?
Yeah, a little bit. I don't really know how to explain it, to be honest.
Go on, do your best.
We basically tapped into the voicemails at Blackpool FC, the angry voicemails about Appleton, just to see what was happening down there, Brady.
No win since October, lacklustre performances with little created, 4 points adrift with our rivals picking up momentum. Transfers have been good, but I'm confident Michael Appleton. I'm not confident, actually. Michael Appleton is the man to get most out of this squad.
Can anyone actually explain his tactics? All I can see is hope for long balls in Madden, who is isolated on his own. What's plan B? How much longer is he going to persist with this Carey Patino centre mid, lightweight and overran? Time to go, Appy.
What will it take for you to address this? At the minute, it feels like you're not overly concerned. We'll get relegated. Even if we do not want Appleton. It's a ticking time bomb.
Get him done tonight!
This just cannot continue. This group of players should be top 10. We haven't created a jot today, and that's down to the manager selecting the wrong team. He has to go.
We shouldn't even go to Saturday with him in charge. It's like being sat in a runaway train on a downhill bit of track. Wait for it, and the brake lever's just come off in your hand. He couldn't motivate a cat to jump through a cat flap.
I'm rating Appleton's season a 2 out of 10. He promised aggressive attacking football. He's played the total opposite. He's been too negative in the press, and the majority of the fan base just don't like him. The sooner he goes, the better.
Very angry indeed. Very angry indeed. Listeners should know that was done, what, like 30 minutes and then before Appleton was sacked?
Yeah. I'll give them a secret, because obviously people know that wasn't actually Blackpool fans. That was me reading tweets from Blackpool fans about Appleton. It's quite amusing looking at that. It made me feel a lot better about Town, to be honest, that there's other clubs that maybe overreacting. I don't think our Twitter's that bad, but it was very interesting to. Yeah, I know, Brady. Maybe I'm being a bit.
It's that bad.
Town. Yeah.
From somebody who's written about Town and talked about Town publicly a lot, let me just confirm it is that bad.
Well,
all football clubs are, though. All football clubs are. Let's not make this about Town or Blackpool. All football fans have the crazy gene somewhere in them. It's just whether some wear it as a badge of pride or some manage to stuff it right down like me.
Yeah. What I got from it, though, that they've been really down on Appleton. I was actually really surprised to kind of read some of the stuff, and I don't think people. I think people kind of getting behind Fotheringham a bit, that's what I'm getting from it. At least I think it's not turned that sour, has it, or anything? Even though we're still in that bottom three, I think maybe people
they should be getting behind Fotheringham at this point, because he's got them to turn the corner. You know, whether there's another level or not, I don't know. But he's also being given a load of players that can make a difference. So yeah. I guess we're kind of going to see, you know, what he can do before the end of the season. But you were down amongst the dead men, and now you've got a fighting chance. Yeah, and you have to. You know, I was talking to you. You may know him, but Matt Shaw does another podcast. I can't remember which
he used
one.
to do a pod.
But I was talking to him a while ago, and you know, we were chatting about it and making the point that if it was Michael Heffley in the dugout and had got the exact same results with the exact same set of players, you know, people would be falling over themselves to say what a brilliant job he's doing with the resources he's got and everything. So I'm still, there are things I'm not convinced about with Mark Fotheringham yet, and things I think that you look at and you think, okay, well, they're very good markers that he could go on and really be a really, really good coach, you know. But what's undeniable is the results, and the results are a hell of a lot better right now. But also what I think is quite interesting is it has gone exactly as he said in his press conference, you know, when he mapped out how he thought it would go and the trajectory and what would happen after the World Cup. I mean, you can't knock the fact that it's happened exactly as he said it would, which also has to give you some kind of faith that there's a little bit of a plan and a little bit of a football brain in there.
You telling me you can read the future, Dave?
Yeah, I would. The first question I'd ask him, will Brighton get into Europe this season?
Well, it's not a Brighton podcast, Dave. You can have your moments to talk about former Brighton players. Do not worry. But actually, asking that, Dave, and I'd be interested to get your take on this. Not to go after, you know, one particular person, but when I've been speaking to people who aren't so keen on Fotheringham, I still kind of feel like, you know, not to criticise Schofield, but I kind of feel Schofield's tenure, you know, we know all the reasons we've explained, maybe he wasn't ready for that role, but that's, for me, a large part of the reason we're in this mess. I think Fotheringham's actually done a good job, which you kind of touched on there.
Oh yeah, I mean, undeniably, I think there were. I think as much as people want to blame Danny Schofield, I think what is undeniable is like Carlos Corberán completely ruined their pre-season. You know, like a few days. in a literal sense, a few days before the season starts, everything went out the window. And as a result, the team more than anything were just completely undercooked. You know, they were not ready for the start of the season, and the season started. And it was no surprise to me. There are all these, I mean, we're not immune to hearing all these rumours. We heard all these rumours. All the players don't like it because all they're doing is running. Mark Fotheringham doesn't know how to set the team up because he's just making them run. They needed to run. They are undeniably, you know, streets ahead fitness-wise where they were, you know, when they last played Blackpool in the home game. Right now, they needed that, and that was their big strength last season. And it was, you know, it was like Samson, someone cut their hair over summer and all the strength had gone, you know. So yeah, it's as I said, I this isn't a Mark Fotheringham Appreciation Society podcast or anything like that, but I still have reservations over certain things. But you just have to look at the results at the minute, and you have to think, could anybody else have done what he's done with the players he's had available and the injuries? And it's not like he's blown all the players up in training either. They've all been like impact injuries happening in game. It's not been like, you know, when Carlos Corberán collectively ruined half the squad's hamstrings. It's been, yeah, there's a lot of football to be played this season. There's a long way to go, and I honestly don't know where Town end up. But as I said, you have to say you've got a fighting chance at the moment, and I would argue 6 weeks ago you didn't. So, you know, it is what it is.
It is what it is. And what we'll do is we'll take a break. We'll tackle the rest of this game. Maybe listeners, you know, in the ad break, listen to the ads, because obviously that helps us donate more money to charity. But you could always listen to the Rocky IV soundtrack, pump yourself up. And yeah, we'll come back and do the mailbag. Okay, so we're back. Our hearts are on fire. We've got a strong desire. Let's get into these mailbag questions.
You've got mail.
Okay, so the first one we've got is from Clark Eastwood. Clark, thanks for you send us quite a few tweets. I'm going to pick this one. You're one of three, because I thought this was a good one, as were the rest. Clark says, to what extent do you feel recruitment has been based on who is available quickly, as opposed to addressing the most striking needs in the squad? Never easy in January, and we aren't an attractive proposition given our position, but not to bring in a left back would be negligent. Dave, what do you kind of think of that one?
Like, there's undeniably an aspect of that, but that's because it's January. And in January, you have to shop where it's available, because if you're trying to get somebody out of a club who isn't available on the outside, then it's going to cost you probably 2-3 times what it would in the summer. And that is at all levels of football, because people know you're desperate for that player at this point. So naturally there is an element of that, but at the same time, I think Town have recruited to a model of what is the type of player we need. And I spoke about it on the other podcast. There's another Town podcast. That's mad. But you look at like Martyn Waghorn, and a lot of people raised a few eyebrows, and Steve isn't convinced. But if you look at what Waghorn is and what type of striker he is, okay, that's the type of striker that Town haven't got. And I'm not adverse to them bringing in players that offer them something different. They've, you know, Anthony Knockaert is not the player he was. You know, in 2016 and 17, he was an absolute magician, a genuine bona fide magician. But that was 5-6 years ago now. But do Town have another player creatively who will take the risks he does and try to play the risk passes? No. So, yeah, you know, he may have been available, and that may have been a key criteria, but he also fits where Town need him to fit. So of course there are elements of that, and that is due to the context. But what is undeniable is Town are having a go here. You know, there's Waghorn, Knockaert, you know, Hungbo. We know they're going to go and get a keeper, because they're not going to just sort of assume Billikapit can come in and do a job. Matt Loughton's in there, and I still think they'll probably do something else as well. I'm not quite sure what or where, but I think they'll do something else. They're having a go here, and you can't You can't say they need a load of business, we've got to upscale this squad. Oh, I'm not sure about the type of business we're doing. They needed bodies. They're getting bodies for specific roles. That's what they have to do right now.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think we were talking about in our kind of pod chat, but I'm pleasantly surprised with who we brought in. I think typical kind of Town maybe downplaying expectations. Fotheringham saying there's not a lot of money, but I think I was expecting a lot worse than what we've actually got. And like you say, we've got a fighting chance and we've got options. Tom, what about yourself? Do you think it's been based on who's available quickly? I mean, we kind of talked about it there, but Clark also said if we don't bring in a left back, that would be negligent. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, it would be nice to see a left back, but I mean, who's it going to be? It's probably going to be a loan, isn't it? I think the three loans that we've got in, I'm pleased with them. I see what they're about. They're all championship experience. Waghorn very recently helped keep Derby up, so you've kind of got a bit of that experience in there, along with two people who know how to win in the championship as well. I mean, Waghorn's been in teams like that as well. And then we got Canberra, who I guess he was about. I think that was more of a link with Fotheringham potentially. That one.
That's the one I'm not convinced by. But at the same time, I sort of don't. If Fotheringham thinks that's his man to potentially get some messages over to other players in the squad or other players in training, then I see the sense of it. But actually, on the pitch on a Saturday at 3:00, I'm not convinced by that one.
Yeah. I mean, he scored though, didn't he? I mean, I know it was, and then he missed that sitter, but he did score. And if that's the thing, Dave, if he can pop up and he's playing for a manager that he likes and he knows he can play under, you never know, do you? But yeah, so I agree. Yeah, left back for me. Ruffles is really interesting. Ruffles, because I don't know whether it's down to the fact he's hardly had any competition, but then he had a year last year where he didn't really give Toff any competition because he was almost undroppable, Toffolo. So it's a really interesting one. Maybe if Pearson starts playing more down that left side as well with Ruffles, it could improve his game potentially. That'd be interesting to see. But if we can get a left back in, just to give him a bit more competition, that'd be good.
I think you touched on there, but for Ruffles, I think he was a lot better in the whole game. And like you say, maybe give him a couple of games with Pearson, because this is no disrespect to Boyle, but Pearson is a better defender for me. So maybe having someone who's better in that area near you, it's certainly going to make you look better.
This is another conversation I've had with Matt Shaw, who is, fair to say, not much of a fan of Ruffles. I don't mind him. I think his two biggest crimes or his two biggest problems are, one, he's not Harry Toffolo, so he's not in the top 2 or 3 left backs in the league like Town have enjoyed for a couple of years. And two, like, bless him, I think Will Boyle is a lot of things, but is he a week in, week out championship defender starting every week? I don't think he is. I think there's definitely a role for him in the squad, but sort of being forced to play him, I'm not. If Luke and Bete had turned out to be even half a success, I'm not sure Boyle would have had the minutes he's had. So he was well down the pecking order, and he's had some great games because he can do a certain job really, really well. But does he particularly help Ruffles out on that side? Realistically, not at all. Not at all.
No. Well, we'll see. There's a lot of season to go. I mean, and he did score 2 against QPR to give us that win. So let's be nice to Ruffle, shall we? So the next question, Mark Harrison asks, Tom, I'll come to you first with this. Mark Fotheringham has instilled a defensive mentality into the squad. Now that he has more attacking options, will we see a change in tactics? I know there's been talk, and I think Fotheringham's kind of touched on it, but maybe he wants to play with more strikers, maybe have 2 up top. What do you think, Tom? Do you think he'll, having the more options, do you think he'll tweak his starting 11 and go for it?
I don't know, Brady. Can't get inside his head, can I mean, if he has mentioned it, then potentially be interesting to see that. But then I don't know, 2 attackers, that changed the formation a bit too much. I don't know what he'd end up doing in the. I don't know. I'm just looking at the formation now. I mean, he likes that 3 at the back, doesn't he? But would getting another attacker in there would. I always think if you're playing 3 at the back, that normally you end up just having the 1 up front and then the 2 kind of attacking behind. So yes, maybe. I don't know. Dave, you're probably better at this kind of thing than me. So I'm throwing it straight over to you.
I think if you look at the signings he's making, my gut feeling is I think he's building a 4-4-2. I think in that 4-4-2, he wants the flexibility to be able to sort of turn it fairly quickly into a 4-3-3 or certainly into like a 4-5-1 out of possession. But I think he's building a 4-4-2 and he wants 2 presences in the box. I think when you say 4-4-2, people have an idea that it's 2 straight lines and 2 up top, and it's just not that anymore. There's no adequate way to describe football formations anymore, because no matter how you lay them out, there's always a player who doesn't fit the mold or fit where you think they should be in that system. But I think what is clear is he wants a winger who can cross consistently from open play. I think it's fairly clear he wants different options up front to try and find ways for them to dovetail together, because, you know, Jordan Rhodes and Danny Ward, bless them, the one thing they can't do is play together really, because they tend to drift into the same spaces. Where if you look at Waghorn with Jordan Rhodes, you've got sort of a real poacher and finisher, and with Waghorn, you've got a bully. So could that work together? You know, if you get Waghorn trying to win the ball and just give it to Rhodes in shooting positions. And so I think, I personally, I think he is trying to do something. Whether he'll get there or not depends on how the players that he's brought in settle into the roles. So you look at the wingers, and they've now got a very decent selection of wingers to call from, but you need a couple of them to step up and, you know, hit the straps early, and because not every move you make comes off. That's just football. And if you've got Sorba one side and somebody who can really cross on a sixpence from open play the other side, that suddenly becomes a very sort of effective weapon, and your 2 defenders can sit a little bit deeper and just offer a little bit of protection because they've got 4 bodies to hit in front of them instead of just one, as sometimes happens with Huddersfield Town, shall we say. So yeah, I do think they will likely evolve onto something like a 4-4-2 that might look a little bit more like a 4-2-3-1 in practice, but I will have to lay out for Opta and then pass it on to Sky and everyone as a 4-4-2.
Nice. Fozzie's playing a 4-4-2. You heard it here first. Next question is from Mr. Whitaker. He says, the fixture movements need more than 10 days notice. Tom, you may have seen that, obviously, with Bristol advancing in the FA Cup. Our game's been rescheduled, as has the Coventry game. I suppose it's. I had a look into the rules actually. This is how bored I was earlier. The league reserves any rights at any time to reschedule a league match after consultation and consideration of the representatives from the clubs involved. They do also say every club must have a publicly stated policy regarding ticket refunds or other arrangements for abandoned matches. So Town said as well, in fairness, they will have more information on that. But Tom, you know, a bit of uproar, quite rightly, with the news today. What did you think about it?
I mean, it's not affecting me because I wasn't gonna go, to be honest. I mean, I probably could go now, though. That's the thing. So it could work in my favour. I wasn't going to get to Coventry on a Tuesday night. It's the thing that annoys me with this kind of thing is it's kind of the fans who have already paid for travel, etc., and are more than likely not able to get a refund. Train. I mean, you've got to look at train companies for that as well, but it's kind of that consideration. The one goodwill gesture I think Town could potentially do is offer, I know it's money, but offer free coach travel now to to at least any fans who may already have bought train travel or whatever, that kind of thing. I don't know. I'd be well miffed if I'd got me train tickets and everything sorted, and then it's been changed. But if it's a congested fixture list, if it's got to be put there, it's got to be put there, hasn't it? We've got to play these games. But yeah, I think fans are taken for granted sometimes in this country, though, especially by like the EFL and stuff. So I'll throw that one in there as well.
Yeah. I mean, Dave, this happens to quite a few football clubs, not just Town, but unfortunately, it seems to happen quite a lot, more and more these days, you'd say.
Yeah, it's just whoever it happens to, whatever the circumstances, it's just always a massive shit sandwich for somebody to sit down and eat, and it's usually the fans. And what's really gutting for me is that if Town can win this weekend, I'm not a massive advocate of, it gives them some time to reset, potentially look at a couple of injuries, maybe getting them back, getting some of the loan players up to speed. I just think like rhythm and momentum is just such a massive thing. And at this point of the year, when it's cold, when the games come thick and fast, if you can get yourself into a decent rhythm and momentum, you can genuinely pull yourself out of trouble. You can be safe in February. So it's a real shame for me. It's a real shame. And I think, there will be people who have booked travel. There will be people who have booked hotels and were staying over. There will be people who can't do anything about that. And it's poor. It's poor. But the flip side is I don't see a better system either, really. Because, if you're going to keep FA Cup replays, for example, then you're going to have to accept at some point that something else has to give somewhere else. And what has to give is these league fixtures, unfortunately. So, yeah, it's horrible. It's fans that always suffer. It's fans that always suffer in most crap things in football, if we're brutally honest, between the three of us. So, yeah, it's crap, but I don't see another way.
Yeah, I agree. It's crap. I say cram more games in. That's what I say. We don't have enough football, in my opinion. Last question for the mailbag. Dave Witts asks, who's sexier, Christopher Schindler or Anthony Knockaert? Tom, I'll come to you first, Dave. I think I know your answer already.
I think if we did like some sort of, I don't know, really studied it, and Schindler's, the symmetry of Schindler's face and all that kind of thing, it's got to be Schindler, hasn't it? Like, he's a beautiful man. Dave's going to obviously say Knockaert because he's like, he was sexy for Brighton, but Schindler's a beautiful man. He should have been a model rather than a footballer.
Yeah, as I said in the pod last week, met Christopher Schindler for a curry, and he was in his tracksuit, and he still looked $1,000. Dave, go on then. Tell us why you love Knockaert and why he wins this.
Right, listen, there's a difference between being handsome and being sexy. Right, Christopher Schindler, there is no doubt in my mind that Christopher Schindler is going to treat you right. He's going to make sure you're home by 11. He's going to turn up with a rose, and he's going to make you feel wonderful. But Anthony Knockaert, trust me, you're in for a night, son. You are in for a night. And it depends which way you go. Am I loose? Yeah, so I'm going with Knockers. Simple as.
I think that could be an interesting Twitter poll. One to consider. But that'll do it for the mailbag. We'll move on to You're the Boss and how we'd line up the team. So, just to remind everyone from that whole game, according to the old Sofa score, Town lined up in a 3-4-2-1 formation. So that was Billow in net, Lees, Hellick, Pearson, Lowton, Hogg, High, Ruffles, and then he had Redonian Holmes and Jordan Rhodes up front. Tom, what changes would you make for it? Yeah, I'm coming to you first. Yeah, you have to talk about it.
I was hoping you were going to let Dave go first, and then I was just going to say, yeah, same as Dave there. Perfect.
Yeah. Well, Tom, we talked about the horn for High. Straight back in the starting lineup, eh?
Yeah. Do you know what? Fair play to him. And I think he did did an all right job. I mean, I've always liked Scott High, so I'll always back him. I think. I don't know what I'm changing. It'd be interesting to see if Knockaert gets in, or he's on the bench. Brady, I don't know. I mean, I'd probably keep it. Probably keep it pretty similar. I'd be kind of tempted to put Sauber as a wing back as well, potentially. I've just from watching their highlights and stuff. I know Appleton isn't there, and Dave said it at the start. They're good up top, but at the back, they look. They seem to struggle from set pieces, which was they haven't really conceded, but a lot of the highlights I watched are from set pieces, and the teams are basically hitting the bar, missing sitters, kind of things. I mean, we're that's what we've been best at so far this year, and hit the set pieces. So I just think getting Sauber on, Knockaert on as well, delivery, having someone with a good delivery on could be key. But I don't know. I mean, I'm guessing he's probably going to keep it the same formation. To be honest, I like this idea of 4-4-2 though. But yeah, I'd probably stay similar, and then maybe try get Thomas on for me or Knockaert.
I think I'm tempted to keep the same lineup because I don't think they did loads wrong. And for me, this is kind of your subs to win you the game, because I actually quite like that. And I think we talked about it a lot, but Scott High always felt like a Fotheringham player to me. So yeah, I quite like it, to be honest. And I think rolling the dice.
I've spoke about it on the other podcast. There's another Town podcast. I must check that out. And I won't go over all the stories, but Scott High's a real manager's footballer. You know, there's not many managers in the league who aren't gonna love him. Doesn't always transmit to the terraces. That I'm well aware of that, but I wasn't. Me and Steve, knowing a little bit about him and about Town and about how he sets about his day job, neither of us were surprised to see him go back in, weirdly.
Yeah. I mean, you know, he's a credit to his family, Scott High. Foz thinks it, Tom and I think it. So, yeah. Dave, what would you change the lineup? We've got a few more options now, or do you think, you know, with Knockaert maybe still getting up to speed, not ready for a start, or are you thinking sod it, it's time for 4-4-2?
No, I think the 4-4-2 is coming, but I don't think they'll go anywhere near it until Matty Pearson is absolutely 100%. And B, I think they're building towards that. I don't think it's going to happen in the next couple of weeks. I think that is ultimately where he wants them come the last 2 months of the season. So yeah, I don't think we're anywhere near that at the moment. I think they'll probably stick with this formation because at the moment it's a formation that the team are comfortable in. So like it's quite a big risk when you've got a formation the team are this comfortable in before an away game to then suddenly decide, okay, well, we're going to tinker with it now. But I do think there could be a couple of changes. I think it's probably time to let's see Waghorn up top from the start for a game, because you can bully that Blackpool back line. So let's have a bully up there. And, you know, ultimately, John Rhodes hasn't done anything particularly wrong, but the one thing that he's not is a bully, bless him. He's one of the trust me, like, he is one of the nicest people you could genuinely ever wish to meet. So I wouldn't be surprised to see Waghorn potentially start up top, or a change up top, I should say, because ultimately they have a lot of options now. Whether Sauber will come back in or not, I don't think so. But I like Scott High a lot too, but I think David Kasuma will come straight back in. I think one thing that is clear from Mark Fotheringham is even when a player is in a sort of good run and looking good, he quite likes to give him a kick up the bum. And it felt twofold, really. It felt, I want to have a look at Scott High and see what he can do. And if you are half thinking about a 4-4-2, you know, Scott High is a very 4-4-2 midfielder. You know, he would work in that system. So I completely get having a look, but also if it conveniently gives the chance to give Kasuma a little bit of a kick up the bum, who ultimately had done absolutely nothing wrong, I think you then put him straight back in. So yeah, I think a couple of changes realistic. I don't think there'll be anything else. But you're right to mention the bench, because the one thing their changes have done is, like, there were a lot of times earlier in the season, me and Steve were looking at their bench, Town's bench, going, this is thin. And now you look at it and you think, okay, well, Knockaert, potentially Hungbo, Ward, Rhodes, at least one very good central midfielder will be on there. These are options that Town haven't had a lot of the time this season. And with 5 subs to make, you're exactly right. There is 5 opportunities to change the game there now that Town can genuinely take, which I don't think they've had an awful lot this season. So, yeah, I think a couple of changes and a really strong bench is the way to go.
Definitely. And Dave, I've got to say, you're making me feel a lot more positive about Waghorn. So, yeah, more of that, please.
The thing is, again, I'm repeating things I said on the other Town podcast. There's another Town podcast. Wow. But it's like they've signed some streaky players. Waghorn is a streaky player. Knockaert is a streaky player. Canberra, if you look at his career, all his goals have come in clusters. He's a streaky player. And what they're trying to bank on is at least one of them has a streak before the end of the season. And arguably, if they can get one of them to do that, then ultimately their whole business has been a success, really, weirdly. So I just think if you're going to get Martyn Waghorn in to be Martyn Waghorn, then you need to play him as well. He needs some minutes in his legs, and it's not like Town have got a load of nice, easy midweek fixtures or a couple of cup games they can stick him into. Got to get him up to speed, and against a Blackpool defence, which ultimately I don't think is any great shakes. Why not? Worst case, you hook him on the hour and you use one of the other options that you've got, because you have those options now.
Yeah, the Kasumu and Hogg, Dave, I think would be great for Saturday, because I just think they'd bully that midfield. I look at that midfield, the Blackpool midfield, and I think if you kind of get on top of them early on and just kind of put them in their place, you know what I mean? It's quite a young midfield, probably going to be playing, and you get Hogg and Kasumu getting stuck in there early on, kind of letting them know who's boss, basically. It could dictate where that game goes early on, I think.
Yeah, and I think if you look at Hellick, Lees, Pearson, Hogg and Kasumu, that is a little triangle there of 5 players that's a proper championship triangle. That, regardless of where Town's position is in the league, that is 5 players who would certainly, not everyone would get into every first 11 in the championship. I'm not for a moment suggesting that, but all 5 of those players get into every squad in the championship, and I'm including your Sheffield United and your Burnley there. So the fact that Town play them on the pitch, together at the same time, other teams wouldn't play Jonathan Hogg, for instance, but they'd love to have him in the squad. Town can do that. Town have to do that, and that is competitive and combative. But they've got to have, the thing is, the other 5 players on the pitch have got to do all the creative duties, really, because those 5 players' sole jobs is to defend and sort of platform players who are better on the ball. So, it's the way Town have to play, and you just hope that the lads going forward have a good day.
Yeah. And the other thing we haven't really touched on is, obviously, there could be someone new in between the sticks in the goal, but we're going with Billow here because at the time of recording, there's no news on the keeper, but we know they are looking at one, and Fotheringham did say ideally he'd like to bring it in sooner rather than later. So we will see. But yeah, match prediction then, lads. What are you going for? Tom, I'll come to you first.
If Appleton was there, I actually saw Town maybe winning this game like 3-1, because I think it had been the nail in the coffin. Fans would have been already like, ooh, if it had got off to a bad start. It depends. So it sounds like they're going to try and get someone in before we play them, which I think is quite interesting in itself. Like they've maybe had Appleton lined up for a while, because I think the statement didn't even mention someone stepping up from the club or anything. It just said in the next few days they're looking to appoint someone. So it'd be interesting who that might be. So with Appleton gone now, I still think Town can get 3 points here, and I'm going to say they should get 3 points here because they need to. Let's go with a 2-1 Town win, Brady. And Waghorn, Dave's favourite, Waghorn, and then I really want Sorba to get a goal this year. So this season just to kick him off. So let's say Sorba comes on. I said this last week. Comes on, gets a goal.
Nice. I'm going for a win here just because I think Town need to win and I want to will it into existence. But you're right, Tom. I was feeling more competent with Appleton being there. Again, no announcement on the Blackpool boss, but I saw a lot of links with Mick McCarthy, which is interesting. So we'll see what happens with that one. You'll probably know by the time this comes out. But yeah, for me, I think Town, regardless if there's a bit of a jolt, the fans will get behind him. I think the best thing Town can do is try and get an early goal and just get rid of all that positive energy. So with that in mind, I think Town are probably going to do what they nearly did at Hull, which is win 1-0. And I'm going to go, Tom. I'm not going to go for Radoni. I'm going to go for Jordan Rhodes. But yeah, there you go. Dave, what about you? What's your score prediction?
I think Town have to go for it, and I think it's a game there they can win. You're the first person in the world to have ever used Mick McCarthy and interesting in the same sentence. Congratulations to you for that, Brady. I think even if they bring a manager in, I've no idea, no inside word or anything like that. I've no idea if they've got someone lined up to come in, but it's very, very difficult for them to have an impact. And I think your new manager bounce is usually once your manager's had a week, not like literally 24 hours at best, the way it's looking. So we'll see. But I was going to say 2-1 Town, but somehow Anthony Knockaert gets a hat-trick. But I think, do you know what? Let's be positive. I'm going to go 2-0 Town. And I think a striker will score. It might be Waghorn, it might be Rhodes, who knows? But I think they will get a goal from a striker, and I think they'll get a goal from somewhere else. Someone else will pop up with either a header or a Josh Ruffles overhead kick from 25 yards or something like that.
Lovely. So I think that's the first time in a while we've all predicted a win. So lucky us, eh? And yeah, Mick McCarthy is interesting, Dave. He has some great quotes. So I find them very interesting. But just before we go, it's time for Quaner's question.
A few things change, but also a lot of things are still the same.
So this is the new feature in the show. Don't worry, Amazing Elbow fans, he will be back for the Coventry preview. But we asked you the question on Twitter this week. Who was the first player to break your heart by leaving Town? And guys, we got a lot of great responses. Someone who popped up regularly was Marcus Stewart. I think we all know why. Absolutely gutting. But I'm going to read out a couple, and then Dave, I'll probably ask you about a Brighton player. But if there is any Town players who've left who broke your heart as well, please do say.
Tommy Elphick.
We'll read out Tommy Elphick. He retired though, didn't he? He didn't technically leave.
Yeah, true.
Well, you can have a little think. I'll give you another go. But first one is Lord of the Dance says Craig Maskell went to Reading to, quotes, play higher division football. We played Reading the following season and they were lower in the table than us, so helped ease the pain. Paul's Perfect said Frank Worthington, best forward I have ever seen play for Town. His left foot was lethal. Yeah, great player. Bryony says Powell Abbott, pure devastation for a 10-year-old Bryony. Yeah, Tom's nodding. Yeah, absolutely. It was interesting as well how people said, obviously we have some older listeners, we have some younger listeners. I think I saw one where it's like, I saw someone saying Steve Mounier, you're not allowed to be sad about him leaving. So I was sad when he left. So different ages, mate. Carlito Brigante says Lillis says he was my dad's favourite player, and we just lost him the year before. Could see why that one would absolutely sting. Jack Fallow says John Stead, the first time, absolute hero, that man. And Tom, any you like the look of, or you can share your own first player? It doesn't have to be the first player.
Obviously, when Alan Lee left, that was a sad day for me personally. I lit a candle for him, and then it's just a few of those have brought back pretty bad memories. I remember the John Stead one being terrible because I remember he left after being on such a good run, and we were doing all right. We were up in that kind of top 10, I think. We weren't. Jacko hadn't really got it going yet. But then didn't we played Darlington. God, this is how bad that year was. We played Darlington at home, I think a couple of days after he'd left, and lost 3-0. And it just made it just 10 times worse. Pavel, I think circumstance as well, like when I hate it when a player goes to another team in your league. So when Pav went to Swansea and then Jordan Rhodes going to Blackburn, I didn't like that at all. Yeah, other than that, I mean, I was good to see Lewis O'Brien going, just because probably won't see him playing a Town shirt again at this stage in his career anyway. So, but
his testimonial, and that's about it, isn't it?
Yeah. I get very attached to players though, Brady. There's loads that I've been good about leaving, to be fair.
Yeah, it happens, doesn't it? Talking about John Stead was one I remember. I remember I was a bit guilty when Pilks left as well, Anthony Pilkington, even though, with Stead and Pilkington, they went on to do well. So that was kind of like, oh, pleased for him. James actually said about John Stead, he remembers his year 4 teacher almost in tears at Highburton First when Steady left. I tell you which one was good, and it wasn't my first, but obviously a man who's absolutely loved by all Town fans. It was Aaron Moy. I went to Dave's Brighton. I think it was because it was very late in the day, and it was kind of like, oh, are we going to keep him? And then just kind of, So, I just, when he left, I was like, oh, he was incredible. And I don't know, I just felt really flat. I think it was the timing. So, yeah, that was the one that stung for me. Dave, any Town players apart from Tommy Elphick, you've been gutted to leave?
I remember, I've been going to Town for years and years because I've lived up here since 1990. And the Marcus Stewart was a big one. Pilkington was the name that came to mind because he was just a great player to watch, wasn't he? He was just so much fun to watch, really. That was like a real shame. That was like when it was, because it also felt like it was the end of something as well when he went somehow. It felt like it was, okay, they're going to have to build to something else. But I was gutted when Moy went, but then I found out where he was going and I was absolutely delighted.
Thanks for that. But what about Brighton then, Dave? Who was your first Brighton player you left and you were absolutely gutted?
Like everybody knows my feelings towards Bobby Zamora and how much I love the man, but when he went, it was like obvious he stayed a season longer than he had to, really, because he was always bound to play Premier League football. So it didn't break my heart because nobody begrudged him it. The man can do no wrong. Solid gold statue in the Town centre for me. But Danny Cullip is a name that many Town fans won't remember or know, but he was a defender who came in, I think it was about 1990, probably 1998, I think, without checking. Played about 5 years for us, 200 odd games. But he was my Christopher Schindler. He was just like, he was a colossus, and he was good in a bad team. He was good in a good team. He was just brilliant, and he was the sort of player that was just like everything you wanted to see like Christopher Schindler was, just everything you wanted to see in somebody playing in that position for your club. And he went to Sheffield United, and he just basically, his career kind of collapsed after he left us, which was a real shame, really, because there were reasons he had to go and we had to get him off the wage bill. It was the best for all parties. But it was just a real shame. But he's back at the club now, works at the club, and he helps out Worthing FC at the moment. But again, here's my north, my south, my east, my west in terms of Brighton and Hove Albion defenders.
Oh, well, there's a lesson for the listeners. Don't fall in love with footballers. They're only going to break your heart. And we'll end it on that nice somber note there. But yeah, thanks to Tom and Dave for joining us. Thanks to you all for tuning in and listening. And of course, thanks to Magic Rock for sponsoring this episode. Don't forget, you can get 10% off all online orders with the code AHTTC10. And that'll do it. Tom and I will be back to preview the Coventry podcast. That may have been moved, but our usual time will not be moved, thankfully. Gutted for the fans, but if you think of the podcast as the true sloggers, it's actually worked out a lot better for us. So so there you go. Ta-ta for now and up the town.
Up the town.
So town, play up, bring the car back to Huddersfield.